Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Research Notes. I'm Dr. Primrose Ezekjebima, and in today's episode, I've got an upcoming doctor herself, a friend of mine, Gloria Chikaonda. She's got a wealth of academic achievements. I started off as her friend when we were doing a Bachelor of Social Science at the University of Cape Town. And she then went on to pursue an LLB and an LLM at the same university before proceeding to Stanford, where she has attained a JSM and is currently pursuing a JSD qualification. Gloria, welcome to Research Notes. How are you today?
Hi, Dr. Prim. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
I'm good too. Thank you. I'm really excited to chat with you.
Amazing. And thank you so much for agreeing to be here and making the time. I know that you've got a very busy schedule.
No, not at all. Anything for my girl.
Thank you. So, our first question on this podcast is always to ask our guests, what is your field of study and how did you get to where you are today academically?
Okay. Oof. Where to start? So, I guess I'll start with the second part of the question because it'll answer the first part. Um, I started, as you said, I started at the University of Cape Town. That's where I did my undergraduate studies at, where I was doing a Bachelor of Social Science in French, International Relations, and Law.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, at the time, I really wasn't sure what I was wanted to do, but I knew I was interested in the social sciences and in the humanities. I love to read and write and talk and argue.
Yes.
Those subjects also were lend themselves well to going into law school as well. So I was on the BA LLB track in South Africa, where you start your Bachelor of Social Science or your Bachelor of Arts in the first year, and then in the second year you start law school, and then you kind of do them concurrently together, and you graduate with a BA and an LLB or a BSOC in my case. I graduated in 2014
Hmm.
with my or completed my BSOC in 2014, and then graduated from my LLB in 2016. And then at the end of the LLB, um, I, would have loved to have gone into practice, legal
Hmm.
practice in South Africa, but I'm born and raised in Zimbabwe and don't have didn't have permanent residency in South Africa or a work permit, and
Mm.
those the documents, the immigration documents that you need in order to practice law, or do articles and or do pupillage in order for you to practice law. So that was one kind of like practical consideration. But on the other hand, I also just didn't feel ready, to be honest, to go into legal practice. I felt very young. I didn't really know what I really wanted to focus on, even if I were to go into practice. And I already knew that I was interested in African customary law as a research subject. I took it as one of the research courses that you have to take at least one research course in the final year of your LLB at UCT at the time. And so that's what I took my research course in, and did like a little mini research paper on it as part of my LLB. Very fascinated by the topics and the questions, and I was like, hey, let me do a master's program. This is a perfect opportunity for me to spend the next year, getting a master's, which you can't ever really go wrong with the master's. And
Yes.
I'm young, like why not? And I also don't know what my employment prospects are at the moment, so it just made sense. So that's how I ended up doing a master's at the University of Cape Town in comparative law in Africa. um, it is more of it has more of a focus on commercial law in Africa, and
Mhm.
African free trade agreements, etc. But I was interested in the degree because it was one of the few that does a deep dive into the different legal systems across the country. And I was
Mm.
interested in pluralism in Africa, so I wanted to understand how legal systems come to be, but legal systems on the continent, especially different parts of the continent, the historical kind of trajectory of different legal systems, and yeah, so that's how I got into it. And then while I was doing my LLM, and the LLM is 1 year, I
Oh.
ended up taking 2 years because um, the advisor I had at the time
Okay.
um, left the university. And so I was kind
Mm.
of left stranded without an advisor. I ended up being adopted by, my now mentor, long-term friend, Professor D. Smythe. She took me under her wing for the second year of my master's. And she basically just like was like, Gloria, you're perfect for research. And
Mm.
throughout that process, I also learned that she went to Stanford. And at that time, I had been thinking like, I want a change. I just want a new environment, a new academic environment. I had been at UCT at that point, I think for like 7 years. And I was like, okay, I've been at UCT for a long time. I just need something
Mm.
different. And so I approached Professor Smythe and asked her, I'm thinking about going to the United States for further study. What do you recommend? I know you mentioned that you were you did your master's in the US, and she helped me figure it out. We came up with a plan. I started applying to different schools, and then yeah, got into some places, didn't get into some places, but the
Mhm.
major part of it was that the first round of applications that I did, I was mostly worried about just getting into the schools. Like I was like, who is accepting me into, Harvard or Yale or whatever? I
Yes.
was like, I don't have the grades like that. Like I'm not a straight A student. I'm not top of my class. I'm not a summa cum laude. Like I'm just Gloria. So and then it turned out that I actually was good enough to get into the programs, and I hadn't
Mm.
thought about the financial aspect of it. I
Mhm.
kind of figured that, listen, as long as I can get in, like the money will figure itself out, because that was getting in was the biggest thing. I didn't know that the money is the biggest thing, especially
Mm.
if you're at grad school in the US. So I had to forfeit my offers the first year because I was unable to raise the funds in
Mm.
order for me to go to the US to do, another LLM. And the reason why I ended up doing another LLM in the US is because it's the pathway to get into the JSD, which is the PhD in law in the
Okay.
United States. So I think maybe one or two schools that I found in the US that have a PhD in law, but in the US they have what they call a JSD.
Mm.
I think it stands for Juris Science Doctorate or something like that in Latin.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's the equivalent of it's a doctoral program in law. It's the equivalent of a PhD in law. But you had to kind of go through their LLM program because their LLM programs are all international students. So that's why I ended up applying into LLM programs in the US. And so the second time around, um, D again being, connected as she is, especially at Stanford, she recommended I try again. She said, Gloria, it's fine. People apply to schools multiple times, apply to
Mm.
the Hennessy fellowship, this new fellowship that had just started at Stanford in 2018. And it's a graduate fellowship that provides full funding for
Mhm.
graduate students for any program for a maximum of 3 years. So it would cover everything. But in addition to that, it was also a leadership program. And she was like, you're perfect for this.
Mhm.
Try again, apply. We'll just see what happens. So um, I did that and I was successful. I got a full ride to Stanford for my LLM, which is the full name of the program is the Stanford International Legal Studies Program,
Mhm.
SPILS. And yeah, so I did that for a year. And as I said, it's a pathway into the JSD, which is what I was really interested in. So I applied once again into because it's not automatic.
Oh,
We
wow.
about a class of 11 students, and every cohort for the JSD is like 3 or 4 students, so very few, and pretty competitive. But I used my, the work that I'd done in my LLM, in the Spills program to apply for a position in the JSD program. And I did that and was successful. And Knight Hennessy was willing to extend my fellowship because initially
Mm,
I just had 1 year. So they extended my fellowship to an additional 2 years. And yeah, so now I am at Stanford still, and pursuing my doctoral studies in the JSD program. I'm a
mhm,
fourth year now, which is crazy. The program is about 5 years,
mm.
but it's it's a PhD, so the research takes as long as it takes. I'm aiming for five
Definitely.
years, but who knows what's going to happen. Um, and yeah, that's what I'm doing now. I was researching well, not African customary law necessarily, but
Mhm,
still in the area of marriage legislation in Zimbabwe, and the development of marriage legislation and the socio-legal implications of that process. Trying to understand, what goes into um, certain changes that are taking place in our family law policies,
mhm.
in and the political social implications of that. And yeah, that's my what I'm studying and how I got here in a nutshell.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that wholesome response. And I think we need to invite you back to discuss your thesis topic, hopefully when you're done, so that there's no pressure, hey, and you would have already gone through many presentations. The topic will be like on your fingertips. And I really like that you're exploring an area which many people might not be brave to pursue because, when you think law, people going into trade law, people are pursuing banking law, people are now looking at intellectual property rights, artificial intelligence, all these other topics, the environment. But you still took it home back to Zimbabwe and you're interrogating what it means to have legal systems and linking it back to like how does it reflect how society is changing, which I think is very important because marriage is not what it is during the times of our grandmothers when they were ages, our parents when they were ages, and moving forward. So I'm looking forward to reading about your work, and tapping into it so that I can also do my feminist analysis of your stuff. So yeah, all the best as you continue. I know that you will excel and within the right time, within the right time.
Yeah.
All right. So, for the benefit of our listeners and viewers, this is Research Notes. I want people to take notes from what our guests have to say. I really like that your story is one that reflects that you don't necessarily have to be an A-star student like the whole time from first grade, high school, varsity for you to apply, to give it a try to get into what are perceived as prestigious institutions or even prestigious funding programs. And even the first time when you did try and there was no funding, there was someone to hold your hand and be like, you know what, go for it again. And you can also find funding. What I admire from your story personally is that I resisted having to go overseas to do a master's so that I can get into a PhD abroad because I was so obsessed with I needed my PhD by a certain time, which is okay, I think. But I also want to urge other people to say, if you've got to do something to get you to a different qualification, just go for it. It doesn't matter that you already have a master's, and you learn new things from different contexts. I hope you agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think now, especially hitting 30, like my perspective on timelines
Mm-hmm.
has, yeah, it's changed, right? Like I think
Yes.
I am nowhere near where I thought I would be on whatever timeline I had imagined, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, let alone, when I was in first year or when I was in.
Mm-hmm.
So I and honestly, it's been nice to come to Stanford, especially because Um, in the US, people some people start their programs very early. So some
Mhm.
people do PhD straight out of undergrad, because over here you don't need a master's for a lot of PhDs. You don't need a master's to get into to do a PhD program. So a lot of people will have their undergraduate programs. Maybe they did a research project or had some
Mhm.
research experience throughout their undergrad, and they use that experience to apply into straight into a research program. So sometimes undergraduates are very young and they're in their like
Mm.
21, 22,
Wow.
23. And it's been interesting. It's not actually necessarily easier or even
Mhm.
fun because grad students tend to be older, and
Mm.
challenges that you're facing, it's very expensive. At least where I live, it's very expensive. The money that you're making is not much. The level of research that you're doing, it just doesn't lend itself well to being in your 20s, because you're,
Mm.
yeah, there's just something I think about the research journey that requires a certain level of maturity, I think, and a certain kind of approach and
Mhm.
orientation towards, your subjects of study. So, in speaking to younger PhDs, I'm finding that it can be quite lonely to be,
Mhm.
much, much younger in your program. On the other hand, I also feel like, okay, I'm not a spring chicken and I need to make
Oh,
money and
yes.
all of these things. And so I always say like we make the decisions that we make with the information we have at the time. Most of us, right?
Exactly.
Most of us who are in these
Mm.
programs or who want to be in these programs, we're not making arbitrary decisions. We're not just being irresponsible. You are
Mm.
navigating many, many things, many, many things, especially being a non-citizen of whatever country you want to study in or you are studying in. Like a lot of the decisions that you're making are not even up to you, right? Like you're
Yeah.
having to really, like, it's a puzzle and you're trying to figure things out. And then of course COVID happened, which completely shifted things. So I think my biggest advice with regard to these kinds of decisions is give yourself grace. Do
Mhm.
what you can, do what makes sense at the time, given the money, given the time that you have. But know that doing a PhD or like an additional master's that you don't really need, which was sucked honestly, because I got to the program and was a
Mm.
little bit frustrated because I was like, "Ah, I'm back in classes again, like I'm done with classes, and I've been
Mm.
in it for a long time." And actually, in a lot of programs in the United States, like the PhD programs incorporate classwork, and you're just like, whereas back home, like once you start your PhD, a lot of the time
Mhm.
it's you and your dissertation and your supervisor, and that's it.
True.
Not have and that also gives you a lot more flexibility to work and do other things that could maybe give you money. Whereas
Mm.
here, like you're full time in class sometimes. So all of those considerations, it was really difficult, but um the time is going to pass anyway. So, you know, you're going to be 30 years old
Facts.
anyway, right? You might as well do it,
Exactly.
your masters under your bag or and other skills. And then something else I learned is that being in school for as long as I've been, and I've been in school for a long time, my whole life, literally. Um, there's some things that I've had to think about the value of my education beyond the qualification
Mm.
and
Yeah.
beyond even the job that I can potentially get, right?
Yes.
Because um, e- education and higher education is not a lucrative endeavor. In fact, I was writing something about this today for another
Mm.
platform, but it's the climate for higher education, not so much on the continent, but definitely in the US. And I'm sure,
Yes.
on the continent it'll follow soon, but it's not friendly. Like the market is terrible. And in general, the world is just not receptive to
Yes.
intellectuals and to academics right now. So I've had to really, really dig deep and be like, why am I doing this? Why is this necessary? Why waste my time? And all of these questions. And I found that the master's program is a program like the master's I did at UC at Stanford. It's
Mm-hmm.
an additional program that I may or may not have needed, but it came, with this incredible opportunity to get into this fellowship program that has opened up so many opportunities for me. Like,
Mm.
my world has expanded times five, just by virtue of being a part of this graduate fellowship and scholarship program. And I've, had opportunities to travel. I've, made incredible friendships and connections and partnerships. I've started, an organization that, tries to support students who are thinking about getting into academia from, the African continent, and many other exciting things. And so I think if you think about the university as a space for potential and for possibility, as opposed to, oh, I'm just going to do another degree, then I think it can be worthwhile, and it doesn't have to feel like a slog or a waste of time, or
Yeah.
um, like you're not on your path, or you're delaying your whatever it is that you want to do in the end. So, just a bit of reframing, I guess, needs delusion.
Yes.
I think a healthy amount of delusion is also helpful, but yeah, that's the way, at least, that I've been able to navigate
Mm-hmm.
being here and like trying to make these decisions.
Amazing. Yeah, they call it delusion these days. Like when I reflect back, I always tell people that I don't even know where I got the overconfidence I think that I had at the time. Like I'm now pursuing this, I'm now going for that. And then, especially during the PhD phase, that's when you make a lot of these realizations. But still, the PhD is valorized. Sometimes you're within a space where people are like, we're part of 1% of the global population. But then you realize that it's difficult to fit into the world because of the many years you spent in the academy, but also in the university space, there might not even be a space for you
Mhm.
after your PhD, which is something that I've been grappling with, something
Yes,
I've accepted that I'm willing to pivot out,
yes,
and it can't take away the researcher that is in me, but just realizing that I would have to do things differently is also what I've come to realize. So thank you
yeah.
so much also for giving us those insights and also just staying on the lane of what it means to be studying in the US. Your
Mhm.
topic is not one that is very popular. I mean, I stand to be corrected. But what has been your experience specializing, in African customary law within the US context?
Yeah, okay. You mentioned this earlier as well about just like studying the topic, even on the continent, to be honest. It's not popular, much less in the United States. But again, it comes down to what I was saying about, how you make the decisions around the program that you enter into, and why um how sometimes it can seem like, oh, this is, a counterintuitive path to take, but there are other considerations that, other people may not understand or may not know. So one of the considerations that I made with coming to the US was this particular program. The LLM that I was getting into is called the International Legal Studies program, as I said, but it
Mm-hmm.
has a focus on law and society specifically. And law and society is, basically just people, legal scholars or lawyers who are interested in the implications of legal doctrine, legislation, and other legal instruments in society. It's an interdisciplinary program. And so, people in my program are looking at law and AI, law and the environment, law and politics, law and sociology, anthropology, which is more of what I do. Um, so so the particular program was, in line with what I was interested in, especially. And the what I found was that there's not many programs like it. And they were giving me very specific skills, like research skills, which you don't typically learn in law school. And even for people who PhD programs, you kind of like a PhD in law in South Africa, you kind of learn as you go, but they're not
True.
dedicated, qualitative and quantitative research courses for you to take. It's more of, oh, you're interested in this, idiosyncratic question. You go and you do it with your advisor, and your advisor kind of guides you, but there's no structure. So that's what I wanted to learn, and that's what I wanted to gain, was like the training, like actual training in qualitative research methods, quantitative research methods, and then of course the approaches and the literature and theories of law and society scholarship. So that's the first reason why I came to the US. The second reason, which is maybe a stronger reason, I don't know, maybe I'll say, yeah, second out of three. The second reason is the funding. While in South Africa, like they will give you some funding. In fact, yeah, you might be able to get, a fellowship or something, but
Yeah.
especially being a non-South African, it was really difficult to get funding for my research, but even funding to be, to study, right? So I would have had to self-fund my PhD. Um, in South Africa. But in addition to that, for the research itself, I would have had to find other ways to fund it that, were not straightforward.
Mm.
Most of the PhDs and most of the graduate programs in the US provide you with funding as part of the acceptance package. So almost everyone, it's very little money, so I'm not even going to pretend like it's a lot.
Yes, but
But
it's
um,
something.
you know that you're coming into the program with funding. And then of course I had the Knight Hennessy, scholarship. So I knew that I had a really, really good funding package that was waiting for me. And so that's why I did it. And then in addition to that, just the resources that are available at these schools, you would be surprised that even though
Mm.
I'm studying stuff on the continent, the libraries, the archives, the connections that they have with other institutions, the professors who are leading scholars in these areas, sometimes you'll find them abroad and they're not, back home.
True.
With that being said, it hasn't been a walk in the park because um, Stanford does not have many Africanists, at least not in the stuff that I'm interested in, and
Mm-hmm.
especially in the law school. So there are not many professors who even focus on law in Africa, and definitely not like family law in Africa. So that has been a challenge, and I've had to be really creative about how I create my research community and
Mm-hmm.
my intellectual community on campus. But luckily, I'd spent a lot of time in South Africa, so I'm still very much in communication with the and still keep up the relationships that I fostered while I was in Cape Town and while I was at
Mm.
UCT. And then the third consideration that I think people should think about is the advisor, right? So if you have a research project or you want to do a PhD or a master's program, especially a research focused one, and your advisor is at a random school in the middle of nowhere, it might be advisable to go to that random school in the middle of nowhere
True.
because advisors can make or break your research journey, especially in something like a PhD that takes
Mm.
5 to 7 years sometimes, and as I said, there's funding stuff, there's family stuff, there's global catastrophe, there's all of this stuff is not happening divorced of, your studies. All of this stuff is happening at the same time, and you need someone who's going to support you. Sometimes it's even beneficial to have a person who's not so well versed in your substantive
Mm-hmm.
subject of interest, but is supportive through just because they know what it's like to do a PhD, and they
Yes,
can advocate for you. They can, look for funding in, whatever little corners they can find it. They can write recommendations. They can,
exactly.
you know what I mean? They can connect you to the right people, etc. Like that person, if you find that person, follow that person wherever they are. So I was lucky that when, I was at UCT, I found Dee Smythe
Yes.
has been my champion. She's the champion of many. And so when I was at UCT, I stuck to it. I was like, D, she was my advisor for the master's program. I actually started a PhD program while I was applying to come to the
Oh,
US.
yes.
And I said, Dee, you're going to be my PhD advisor. In fact, I had been given another advisor for the
Oh,
PhD at UC.
wow.
And I was like, Mm-mm, I'm not
Mm,
playing. I've already had a not so great experience with my current, like the
yes, your
advisor I had before.
previous.
So I now I know that like this is a long relationship. It's a long process. You want someone who's going to, those things that we are struggling with now, like not having citizenship, trying to find a job,
Mm,
trying to find TA ships, etc. You need someone who's going to say, yes, committee, this person does not have citizenship, but she's the best in the field and I need her on my
exactly.
team, or we need her
Mm,
in the department, or you know what I mean? Like you need those people. So all of those things made it make sense to come to Stanford, to the particular program that I came in. And then it has taken a lot of courage, honestly, and stubbornness mostly to continue with my interest in African customary law
hmm
because, as you said, as you pointed out, it's not, lucrative. It's not the sexy stuff in law, and it's marginalized even in law school when I was doing it. But for me, it's about doing what interests me, and I think if I do a good job, and when I've done a good job as a researcher, is to make people care about the research, make people
Yes.
understand why this is important, make people be like, hey, we all should be talking about African customary law and family law and Zim.
Mm,
And if I can manage to do that, then I would have succeeded. That's like the long-term goal. And I don't think actually that will necessarily happen through academia. It
yes.
might, but now, especially as I'm in the middle of my program and progressing towards the end, I'm starting to thinking outside of the box about how I want to position my scholarship and how I want to make it tangible and give it to the world
Mm,
um, in a way that may or may not be through, a course or through a paper or through a book. Um,
definitely.
and yeah, just trying to be creative about what my scholarship means in the outside world. But um, yeah, that's that's the rationale for being at Stanford and for what I study while I'm here.
Amazing. I wish you all the best. And I admire your bravery. And I'm pretty sure people that have been listening in do as well. I really want to touch on some of the points you mentioned because I like also just reflecting on my personal experiences, with the supervision, like you said. I also found someone I believed was going to be a good supervisor for me for my master's. And my choice of where to do a PhD was in line with that particular person. It had less to do with its UCT or it's the political studies department at the University of Cape Town. But because I had established a very good relationship with Professor John Akopari, I was like, you know what? Can we work together? He was like, of course, we had a great relationship. And even for me to have future opportunities in terms of research and writing, I've spoken about it honestly on my channel, to say for me to be at particular platforms speaking, for me to be able to submit my work to particular publishers, because they've got the names and they've got the networks. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of networking that also happens in academia. It's
Yep.
not all I worked hard and it's fortune,
Oh yeah.
so much more. Even with teaching assistantship jobs, every
Hmm.
supervisor has more than two or
Babes.
three PhDs, You might come out seeming like the fave, but I mean, it's the reality. And
Yeah.
speaking to them
Yeah.
also, being honest about your situation, because sometimes they think you're
Mhm.
good. So speaking to them about where you're coming from, what's going on. I personally only had tuition funding from UCT. So for me to actually live in Cape Town and pursue my studies in the city, I had to make a living somehow. So navigating that also, I did get some support, like significant support from my supervisor as well. So I'm also a strong proponent of, chase the supervision, especially if the
Mhm.
support is good.
Yeah.
And even on the topic, my supervisor was an expert on the African Union and development, right? But I was interested in doing election conflict, and he was willing to read my work and think about the works he's done or people who are experts on elections and conflicts and how
Yeah.
best they could help. So that also works. I definitely agree with all those points that you raised. Now, I was just thinking also in terms of the discussion. I like that the world is going into a time when it's acceptable for research to be communicated in multiple ways. When I started the YouTube channel, I honestly felt stupid. I was like, people are going to be like, what kind of academic is busy yapping on YouTube, you know? But COVID hit, people were on screens, people were
Yes,
teaching using, this very Zoom and all that, and it's
TikTok.
become acceptable. Podcasting, yes, has some negative connotations in other places, but it's also a platform, and your research speaks to society. So you're going to have to find ways, definitely, even if it means doing some community projects as well, because the platforms we're speaking about aren't accessible to, the majority of people on the continent or even in Zimbabwe itself. So that's really a good way to go. Thinking about different ways of research communication is also my passion, hence, the purpose of this show.
Mm.
Right. So I'm going to go into a subject that is quite deep. I like that you're a strong proponent for mental health and self-care. And many times people don't really know how to go about it. It's sort of normalized that, if you're in the trenches of a master's or PhD, there's some suffering that goes on. But you don't know how much you're supposed to suffer or take without thinking that, you're about to hit a wall or you need to go for therapy or you need to seek assistance. So, just from your personal experience, how do you tend to yourself and what can others do to sort of like keep themselves in check?
Yeah, oh my gosh. I think so it's interesting. There was an article that just I saw yesterday or the day before that's come out that found that that people who do PhDs are 50% more likely to suffer from depression and mental health issues
Mm.
than their peers who are in other professions or fields.
Mm,
And 50% is
a
huge.
lot.
And
Sure.
the article was like, oh, this is less than what we actually thought. But like
What? How
that
can
means
you
that
expect like everyone to be struggling
yeah,
like
it means
that?
that qualitatively it probably feels or looks worse than it
Mm,
actually is empirically, but still that's quite depressing because 50% is not an insignificant
mm,
stat. So yes, like people doing a PhD is not easy. And in fact, there are, now there's research that shows that there's a direct correlation between being in higher education and your mental health struggling, and
mm,
oftentimes physical health struggling. Usually those things are, tied together. Um, People leave, come out of PhDs and they're far less well than they were when they entered.
mhm.
It has to do with how expensive it is a lot of the time. And if PhDs were better funded, we would all be doing much better. Like
Exactly.
if we were considered to be doing a job, because that is actually what we're doing. Again, oh, that's another thing that I liked about the US is that the reason why they fund most PhDs right off the bat is because they consider it as like employment essentially. Um, Whereas I found that on the continent, at least in South Africa, that's not the case, right? The approach is kind of like, well, the PhD is your decision. You're doing it for your own, advancement or whatever,
Mm,
but you're not actually contributing to the university itself, or working for your advisor for the department. Um, and so that was the other decision that made me come abroad. Or actually, that's something I learned more of once I got here, but
mhm.
solidified my decision to come and study abroad. But yeah, funding is a big stressor. At least for me, funding has been a stressor, honestly, in my entire life.
Yeah.
Right from undergrad. Um, it's expensive, and it's increasingly more expensive, and it wears on you trying to juggle a whole bunch of things, including jobs. I've never not worked while I was studying.
Mm.
Um, Literally, as soon as I could find a campus job in first year or
You're
second
on
year or
it.
whatever, I was hustling on campus. And then, of course, you're even limited because I'm not a citizen. You're limited in how many hours you can dedicate to work and, finding work for yourself. And then, in addition to that, the environments themselves are not conducive for diversity. They're not conducive for people of color, for women, for Black people, especially. They are often very unsafe, honestly. And so it's a stressful place to be in, and you're constantly comparing yourself to the next person. You're constantly comparing yourself to, people who are not even in academia.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, those feelings of being an imposter, those feelings of overwhelm and,
Mm.
not feeling good enough, all of this stuff, right? For a while, I did not think about, I think I thought about it, but it was in the back of my mind. I was like, oh, I'm fine. And
Yeah.
then I came to the US, being completely burned out. I've never taken a break from school. I've been in school. Both of us have been in school straight through.
And
You hear people who take
people take
gap.
sabbaticals, gap
Yeah,
years.
yeah, and like, like, I don't even know what that feels like. I take a
Mm.
little break here, take a little break here. Maybe you go, on the university vacations, but even then, you're probably doing some work during that time.
Oh.
So, when I came to Stanford, I realized I was burnt out. I was exhausted, especially the
Mm.
last few years being in Cape Town had been so stressful for me financially. Um, and I wasn't even able to like be excited about being at Stanford. Like all of this new and interesting stuff was happening,
Mm.
and I was in this new environment, and I was on this scholarship, but I was tired. I was exhausted. I just was going to class and coming home. Like that was it.
Oh.
And then so I had what I think was a panic attack. Um I've actually never spoken about this publicly, but yeah, so I had what I think is a panic attack. It wasn't diagnosed or
Yeah.
anything, but Stanford provides at the law school, they have like kind of an in-house therapist who's there, because they say law students, especially med students, also like they experience some of the worst symptoms and rates of depression and
Mm.
health issues in grad schools. So they have kind of someone who's stationed there to help us. So I went to see her, and we had just started seeing each other, like I think, one or two times, and then the pandemic hit. And I mean, everyone's mental health went in the dumpster during the pandemic,
Yes.
like, and so of course mine, even went even further down. So it was a really, really tough time. But it was through that time that, once things started to normalize, I started back therapy again.
Yeah.
And it completely changed my life because I realized, number one, I was burnt out. But number two, I realized kind of this, rat race that I had been on since I had started school. Um,
Mm.
because we're in school, we don't think we do actual work. And so we don't think of ourselves as being worn down or being tired. And we don't give ourselves the same we don't experience the same stresses that other people do. And people often downplay, honestly, the stress of being at school because they're like, oh, you're at school. And then, of course, if you're like at master's and PhD level, they're like,
Mm.
well, you know how to do this. You're always good at school. You've
Yeah,
got this,
you've
you know?
mastered this.
Yeah. And so I think I just stopped paying attention to how I was feeling, like physically, emotionally, mentally. And once I started therapy, I started to unpack that stuff. And really it opened up a whole like, on the one hand, it was a Pandora's box, right? Of like
Mm.
that you go through traumas that you have, even dating from childhood, etc., including things and challenges and experiences that I've had, in my adult life. And so that's what I think I would define self-care as being, right? Taking the time to understand how you're feeling, paying attention, asking yourself, how am I?
Mm.
and then taking the steps to address that. That is that's the, I think, the definition that I think works best for people, because it does not focus on, oh, go and get a massage, oh, go,
Thank
you know,
you.
go work out if that's not your thing, oh, go to a therapist if you can't afford one. It's just like, in what ways can you take a moment to
Mm-hmm.
yourself to unpack how you're feeling, how you're doing,
Yes.
how the week has been. Oh, you had an interaction. You feel funny. What is that?
Mm.
What happened there? You know what I mean? Like, just paying attention to how you feel. Now, the way I do it, as I said, therapy is a staple in my life. I've been lucky
Yes.
that Stanford gives us like 10 free sessions of therapy. UCT actually
Oh.
did do that in Cape Town. And
Mm-hmm.
I did go see a therapist once before, when I was in, I would say twice actually. Usually
Yeah.
I would have like a bit of a breakdown during exam time and existential crisis. And I'll be like, what the hell?
Mm.
I don't even want to hear. And one of those times I went to see a therapist. I did not continue with it because I think I felt like, I don't know, I was just uncomfortable with the whole process. I was like, I don't need this or whatever.
Mm.
Even though when I did go, and then I was an undergrad, just having a space to talk to someone who has no judgment, who has no stake in whatever decision that you make,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes who can even give you skills and approaches to alleviate some of the symptoms that you may be feeling, was really helpful.
Mm.
So therapy is my thing. If you are at an institution and they provide free therapy, even if it's just 10, 5 sessions, whatever, do it.
Mm.
Like,
Correct.
a lot of the times when we're at these institutions, there's so many things that are free that help our mental health, help our well-being, and we don't take it up because I don't know what it is. We just don't do it, right? Um,
Yes.
I'm like, no, if they're giving free anything, I'm there. So that's one thing. And then of course I love to journal, and that's, a practice that I started. Actually, I was still at UCT when I started it, like
Yeah.
towards the end of the master's program. I found that to be really helpful because it's very difficult for me to be self-critical when I'm writing down, because then you can't be like, oh, Gloria, you're trash. Like, I'm like, okay, hold on, like that, that doesn't feel
Yeah.
right. So it to externalize whatever feelings I have is really helpful for me. And then I like to take walks. I'm not a super gym person,
Mm-hmm.
but I found that walking really, really helps me. And yeah, and then there are other things that I do. Like, I'm a very my senses are very sensitive. So,
Oh.
like, I love candles, and I
Oh,
love,
nice.
incense, and just things, sound, and things like that, and just like making my living space welcoming. Um,
Mm.
so it ranges from like getting, professional help, to doing simple things like just resting, taking a nap. I'm a napper. I take a nap every
Yes.
day. If
I love
I,
sleeping as well. Thank
like,
you.
I think the core aspect for me has just been like slowing down, paying attention. How do I feel?
Mm.
What can we do? Asking myself, is this true? Because a lot of negative self-talk happens in
Mm-hmm.
academia. I'm not good enough. The work is not good. I need to be working hard.
Mm.
Oh, I'm never gonna do X, Y, and Z. Oh, this person
Mm.
achieved something. I haven't done it. I'm trash.
Mm.
Like, these are real feelings. And yeah, so I think for me, it's just about normalizing mental health issues, because I think we all face them. We don't talk
Mhm.
about it enough in society. We don't talk about it enough in academia. Um, but I think you can take steps just to take care of yourself. I've also had to really, really reframe my standards for success,
Oh,
because
wow.
again, academia is very, on the one hand, there's like a path that you have to take, or that you can take. Um,
Mm.
do the publications, teach this and that, you know what I mean? On the other hand, it can feel very arbitrary. Like, there is no path, like some people get ahead with one book. Some people
Listen.
10 publications and they
I
don't get
tell
anything.
you.
You know what I mean? Like it's
Exactly.
very arbitrary and it really depends on who you are. And so for me, I'm like, increasingly, I'm like, this stuff is all made up. Like nobody really knows what. A lot of it has to do with luck. A lot of it has to do with,
Thank
as you said,
you.
relationships that you have,
Yes.
people that you know, people who like you and favor you for whatever reason. And most of those
Mm.
reasons have to do with like, are you white? Are you a man? Or, you know, do you have family members who are in academia and that kind of thing? Like things that I can't control. And so
Yes.
I've had to throw out a lot of what is the standard, right? The standard for productivity, the standard for, you know, even that decision of like, oh, let me be creative about how I intend to put my work out there has
Yeah.
come from me realizing I don't think that I don't think that the path for me to what they call the standard path for me to get ahead in legal academia, I don't think that's going to
Yes.
work for me. We have yet to see. Maybe it will, but
Yes.
it may not. And so if it doesn't, like, how am I going to do this work that I still want to do, that I think is necessary, that I want to be compensated well for? Um, how am I going to be here and be in this place and be healthy and be well? Um, what do I need to do? And that might
Mm.
mean working less than another person. That might mean, you know, not getting one award or, you know, not pushing for getting one award and
Mm.
instead going to therapy. You know, that might mean I don't know, just reframing, I think, what I think success means, especially because I've been in school for so long. And
Mm.
I've become, you know, a little cynical and a little disillusioned by, you
Mm.
go to school and you can do whatever you want. You can be anything you
Mm.
want. That has not been my
Mm.
experience.
Nope.
And that dissonance has been very difficult for me to deal with
Mm.
mentally, of like, you can do all the things, tick all the boxes, and still there may be barriers to what you're trying to achieve
Yeah.
because you don't come from the right place, you don't have the right citizenship, you don't have money, etc.
Sure.
And I've had to find ways to care for myself and
Mm-hmm.
really reinforce myself and my worth in that environment and in those circumstances, and that has meant um you know doing what others are not doing. So for example, even
Mm.
going to therapy, like I do one-on-one therapy and I go to group therapy,
Oh,
and there are not
wow.
many people who are signed up for group therapy, even
Can
though
imagine.
so we all need to be we
I've
all
never
need to
tried it
be
out. Thanks for bringing that
exactly.
up.
People, because people are in the lab, people are in, you know, the library. People are
Mm-hmm.
prioritizing their work, and I completely understand that. But for me, I've had to be like, okay, yes, I want to prioritize my work. Yes, I want to finish my dissertation. Yes, I want to publish as much as I can. But I also want to be well. I also want to take care of myself. I also want to come out of this and, you know, not be on antidepressants if possible.
Thank
Not that there's anything wrong
you.
with that. If I need medication, I'm taking
Yeah. Go
medication.
for it.
Whatever I
Yeah.
need to do in order for me to regulate myself, that's what I'm going to do. And I think we need more of those conversations. And in fact, I think mental health should be folded into the programs that we have in a
Mm-hmm.
formal way, so that it's not something that we have to navigate by ourselves, and so that it's more normalized within academia. So it's a big soapbox that I'm on to be like, guys, mental health, because at the end of the day, like in order for us to do the research we want to do, we have to survive. Like we have to be here to do it.
Exactly. Yes.
Without being well, our work is not even sustainable because we're not going to be able to do it because
Mm-hmm.
physically well, mentally we're not going to be well. And we need to constantly be replenishing ourselves and giving ourselves tools that help us navigate an increasingly hostile world
Mm-hmm.
and increasingly hostile work environment within academia, because that's the reality. Like like all of these things, I love these things and I love my research and I love what I
Mm-hmm.
do, but that doesn't change the fact that academia is really hard to be in, especially if you are a woman, especially if you're Black, especially if you are poor or queer, or you know any
Facts.
kind of oppressed identity that you
Mhm.
occupy will be exacerbated once you get into these, especially these super elite institutions, um, which is again why I think when people decide what universities they go into, where they go to do their research, don't just think about, oh, is this a fancy institution? Think
Mhm.
about the support systems, think about the culture of the place, think
Yeah.
about, am I going to be close to my community? Because I'm in California, I'm in the middle of
Mm.
nowhere, basically, with no, with no one that I know or no one who knows me.
Yeah.
And that's hard. It's really, really isolating. So
Mm.
those are all things that, in hindsight, which is always 2020, I would have thought more carefully about when I was deciding whether to come to Stanford or whether to, where to do my PhD.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's my thought on mental health in academia.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I think this deserves like a whole other podcast and like
Yeah.
episodes of it. I think the major takeaway points is to be aware of, what's going on in your life and thinking about what you can do about it. And I like how you pointed out that it's not about having a life that has like gym, this and that, and then, thinking that there's a balance if you're not reflecting back on what's happening with you. I used to be in denial because I was thinking, no, the fact that you got accepted means you are worthy. But I was still that black Zimbabwean woman in this space that was traditionally designed for elite white males, most of them being European, and most of them that are actually still the ones generating funds into the university.
Yes.
And in some instances, if they're the head of your project, you have to impress them. They're
Yeah.
going to say, the S word sometimes, this shit about your work, even if someone else thinks it's amazing. And especially if you're trying to do something that hasn't been traditionally done, we're trying to break barriers, we're trying to fill in very wide research gaps. And so I've also had imposter syndrome, still have it. Sometimes I feel like it gets exaggerated when I'm in a space and I can notice that actually I'm the only one here who thinks in a certain way. Sometimes it has been me presenting and then people not asking questions, but me realizing that they might actually not have been listening attentively to engage. It can be very disheartening. I've been in spaces where I was literally called last minute to be like, hey, we need a black female panelist and she must have a PhD. We thought about you. And I'm like, did you think about me because of my intellect? Or
Not
because
the, not
you
the token invites.
you
Oh God.
yeah, and then sometimes I'm like, but if I don't take the token invite and speak the way I speak,
Exactly.
then people aren't
Yes.
gonna get it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I mean 99.9% of the time I end up going, even if I tell the organizer that I'm disheartened that they had to do it for those particular reasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Publish or perish is hard. I last year decided to cut it. I've had so many publications, and it was because of that thing of thinking, okay, because most job specs say so many publications that are first author or single author, you make it. But I know people that have one publication, very few citations. If I look at Google Scholar, and they keep getting promoted, they're HODs, we speak at the same platforms. And I know that it does hit me. Sometimes I'm like, why am I stressed? Then I do have that conversation with myself if I can't have it with my mom, my dad, or with someone else. And so I've been hit by so many realities. The connections you mentioned, some people, because their mother is already a professor in this field, yes, they're working hard, but it's a bit easier for them to make it. And,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
and I'm like, if
Listen,
my mom was, I would be too.
so,
Hmm.
like when I came to the US, I mean, they talk about first generation, first generation,
Yes.
first. And like it's not really a term that we use in Africa,
Mm.
in African higher education spaces of like the first
Yeah.
generation, what. But I mean, they talk about it a lot, and there is a
Wow.
lot of support. It's still inadequate even here.
Hmm.
But there's a recognition that being a first generation graduate or first
Mm-hmm.
generation PhD,
Mm-hmm.
or like the only one in your family with that qualification,
Mm.
like it has significant impact on how well you're going to do, how quickly you're going to rise
Mm.
ranks, within academia. Like most people who are PhDs, I believe in the United States have a parent or one parent who is a PhD. Like
Mhm.
the majority have someone who knows what they're
Wow.
doing or how to navigate this space. And
Mm.
so when you think about that and you think like I am the first in my family to get a master's, two masters, let alone and a law
Wow.
degree and a PhD. So I'm
You
one of
you're
one. And I'm
carrying,
like
the
the whole
family, the
the whole
clan.
class. Yeah. And so it's like of course you're having a hard time. Like, of course this is difficult for you. But we are made to believe that these rules are fair across the board. Everyone is coming in with
Mm.
the same amount of experience and opportunities and luck and that's just not how it operates. And
Exactly.
yeah, no, I I 100% relate to how completely unfair the playing field is.
Mm.
And even with publications or like doing the research you want to do, uh, there is a hierarchy of what is interesting. There's a
Mhm.
hierarchy of who can do certain research and who
Mhm.
can't do certain research. There is an old guard in
Mhm.
academia and even on the continent, even if it's about Africa or whatever.
Mhm.
There are people like old white men who wrote some theory 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And, if you don't cite that person, they're like, oh, your
Mm.
arguments are invalid because you haven't
True.
cited.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like there's so much gatekeeping of academia, and it's very, very frustrating. And it definitely wears on you. There's no way
Mm.
you can't. And I think for many of us, we're like, especially being Zimbabwean, we're resilient. Struggle is the name of the game.
Ish.
Let's just do what we can.
Mhm.
But at
Mhm.
this point, you do reach a breaking point where you're like, okay, at what cost?
True.
What is actually the cost of this on my body, on my
Mhm.
mind, my heart? Like,
Mm.
I think even admitting to myself that some of my experiences have been heartbreaking. Like I have been really disappointed
Mhm.
by people, by systems, by the
Mhm.
bureaucracy, academia, and finding that the institution does not love us. In the United States, there are, uh, like in the last couple of years, several women who are at the highest levels, like executive level of
Mhm.
university management, have been dying by suicide
Oh.
because yeah, or just dropping dead, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's like a very worrying trend, where Black women in academia are really, really struggling, and are being almost punished for like the president of Harvard. She was forced to
Yeah.
resign
Oof.
recently, like she was accused of plagiarism, and it was very like spurious allegations which were disproved.
Mhm.
Um, but she still had to resign. And so you realize that okay, you can be excellent. Like this lady has she's done all the things and she
Mhm.
got to be the head of the most prestigious university in the world.
Mhm.
And even then they told her, sorry,
You can't just
you don't
express
look
your
like us,
feelings.
get out. Like they found a
Sure.
reason, they found an excuse, they found a way,
Yeah.
they found a way to block her. And I can only imagine her heartbreak. I can only imagine like the state of her mental health. And
Mm.
honestly, I'm glad that she decided to step away because sometimes that is what you have to do. Sometimes you do have
Indeed.
to like let go of opportunities or to say, "Ah, I really want this. This will be really good on my CV, this publication, this opportunity,
Mhm.
relationship." But sometimes you have to be like, my life, literally, my
Yes.
life is worth more
Mm.
than this. I am worth more than this. And the institution itself doesn't even recognize my work or my value. And they'll move on.
Unfortunately.
They'll get
Oh,
somebody to
so
replace
fast.
you. You
Mm.
know what I mean? So I think just realizing that and starting to really see the way academia operates and my position in it, I'm like, okay, I have to make strategic decisions that make sense
Mm,
for me. They may not make sense for, somebody else. They may not make sense for my parents or, my partner or my friends,
yes.
ever standard
Mm,
or people who are looking to me to be something. Ultimately, it has to be constantly, Gloria, how are you
mm-hmm,
doing? Is this working? Is there a way we can fix it? Is there a way we
mm-hmm.
can protect yourself, fortify yourself? Is there a way
Yes.
you can take care of yourself? And if not, let's pull out. You know what I mean? Let's take care
Mm-hmm.
of ourselves. Let's preserve, rather than like push through. Because that's how I used to operate, like push through, whatever it is, push through.
Mm.
Achieve. I'm
As
tired.
in Shona, they say Ramboka Shinga, like say
Seriously. No, seriously. So yeah, like I get it. I get it, sis. I get it. But all we can do is try our best, and that's what I try
definitely.
to.
Mm.
And yeah, hopefully, what the work that I do will make the mark that I'm hoping it'll make, or whatever mark it will make. But
Yes, I hope so.
I don't think I'm willing to do it at my expense.
Mm, mm, definitely. You won't be happy. You would literally be more miserable than you've been made by the system. So that's really important. All right. So we've come to a segment in every
Okay.
episode where I ask guests if they've got any questions for me.
Oh, okay.
Please be kind. But anyway, yeah. Do you have any questions for me?
Um, well, what's the postgrad life like? That's my question.
Postdoc,
How
postgrad,
postdoc,
postdoc.
postdoc.
Yo. Um, generally, so I mean, for context for the viewers and listeners, I graduated in December 2021 and I finished my PhD in 3 years. And in hindsight, I keep saying,
Which is incredible. Like,
I'm
who does
like, I should have just done it in 5 years.
no? Well, I mean, yes, but you could have, but like, you're done. I mean, I'm still in the trenches, and I'm like, Lord,
I'm like, okay, if I had the struggles I have now, but in fifth year of PhD, I'm like, I could have more grace on myself because I set particular expectations of myself, I thought that I would at least be in a full tenure track position. I wasn't too picky about where the university could be. It didn't have to be South Africa. It could be anywhere on the continent, anywhere in the world. I just wanted to pursue my passions. But I've been doing postdocs, that are offered by universities. Some of it I do think has to do with citizenship that you've been mentioning. States always put their best interests first. So I might not be able to get particular positions because of my citizenship, but also because I'm a woman. Apart from that, we see a lot of Zimbabwean male academics more than the women,
yes.
in South Africa where I am and globally. So it's been really difficult. And being a postdoc is not a happy place in the sense that you're not a student, but also you're not a member of staff.
Mm,
I'm lucky that at Stellenbosch University, where I am now, there's a postdoc community. They try to mitigate challenges that we experience because of the lack of support, because the university is for lecturers, for
and grad,
students, and,
yes.
you know, pretty much that, and making money. So, being a postdoc, I think I've mostly struggled because I did a postdoc at UCT. I had to drop it because my supervisor was leaving UCT. Got a postdoc at Stellenbosch University. My supervisor had to leave. But
Oh,
fortunately, the funding was for 2 years. So I had to find another supervisor. So I'm on my third postdoc supervisor. But that never happened to me during postgrad. So it's been very weird switching my research focus, working with different people, and trying to make something out of myself. I haven't had the opportunity to supervise students as the main supervisor because the universities require you to be, a full time, you know, employee of the university. So At the end of the day, the students I've co-supervised, I'm acknowledged as a reader, which is a very funny term. Yet you do actually most of the work. I've gone through like individuals, three drafts, for example, for people who are doing their masters. So it's like I'm done learning. I'm doing
Mhm.
the work, but I don't have the rank, you know. I do teach here and there, but when there's not enough payment, I'm just like, I'm not gonna do it because I'm past that stage also of, I'm learning.
Yes.
So postdoc has been frustrating for the most part for me. There's a time I even considered quitting and just trying to focus my energy in trying to be an independent research consultant, which is something that I'm still trying to do. So it's been a really ugly experience, lonelier than PhD, because it's difficult to support postdocs on
Yeah.
campus. And
Yeah.
each postdoc is pursuing a different topic. In my department, there's only two of us. Someone is doing land and resettlement. I'm doing gender justice. It's very difficult. What I've benefited from is still having access to universities, being able to do research using university library facilities, attending seminars, also presenting at seminars and conferences as well as workshops. I think it has helped me to strengthen my networks. So I'm definitely appreciative of that. And I think that the lessons I didn't learn during my PhD about research, you spoke about coursework. As a postdoc, I get to go for some courses on quantitative methods and even the qualitative methods where I have a strong command. So the learning hasn't ended. So
Yeah.
that has been my experience overall. But I'm done. It's been stressful. I hope I answered your question
Oh,
adequately.
yes, you did. Oh my God. Yeah. I know postdocs struggle because we don't have postdocs. I don't know any postdocs in
In your
my program,
department.
in my department, but my partner has postdocs in his department. He's in
Oh,
STEM though.
wow. Yes.
But the
I think they
what,
have it worse in STEM,
oh
to be
yes.
honest, because
Oh
we
yes.
get almost the
Oh
same
yes.
money, but yeah,
Yeah. I mean, they get paid, but it's like peanuts. It's
it matches
below,
your cost of living at the at the
yeah.
bare
And
minimum.
at least at Stanford, for most people, it's below what grad students even get as a stipend.
Oh,
And
really?
so it's like, and we live in one of the most expensive cities in the world. So
Hmm.
how do you expect people to survive? And then, like you said, they're in this precarious position where they're not grad students, so they can't even unionize with grad
Mm-hmm.
students. I think they're trying to do that now
Mm-hmm.
across the country. They're trying to, unionize
Yes,
stocks. Um, I mean, even grad students, you should be unionizing everywhere. At Stanford, we just
definitely.
um, for PhDs and master's programs. So because we do work, like this is work. I mean,
Yes.
honestly, even as
We
a
keep the
PhD,
university's rankings up actually with the work we do.
yeah, absolutely. Like we do work, we do research. The research output that we have is credited towards the
Mm-hmm.
university. We don't get any of that, credit monetarily,
Not at
and it doesn't
all.
reflect in the funding that we get. And um, yeah, so what you said like resonated because even here, a lot of the experiences that I've heard of postdocs is like it's very lonely. They, depending on the program that you're in, at least in
Mm-hmm.
STEM, they quite a few postdocs. They'll have like
Yes,
two per lab, so there's a community.
exactly. Mm.
But in the social sciences, there are no labs most of the time. You're
Nope.
working with an advisor,
Mm-hmm.
or a PI or whatever. And yeah, it's just you. And so it's research in general is such a lonely like journey. And
Mm-hmm.
I think because our work is cerebral, people think that we shouldn't be compensated for it. They think, oh, like you're just
Listen.
thinking, you're just reading, and it's like
Thinking is a lot of work.
sometimes I'm like, I wish I was doing hard labor actually, because like thinking actually takes a lot out
Mm.
of, because
And some of these things stay with you even in your sleep. Like
Yeah,
the
no, absolutely.
intellectual.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, when you have a 9 to 5, and this is what I hear, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are leaving academia. I follow a lot of people who are academics on Twitter, and many of them are announcing literally every day. Somebody announces, guys, I'm leaving academia for good. Some people are like maybe 2 years from finishing a PhD,
Mm-hmm.
I'm done. I'm out. Like,
Sure.
because like, why should I do? I'm done learning,
Mm-hmm.
and the environment is toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Can't even do the research that I really want to do with the support.
Exactly.
And then you're giving me peanuts on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a grown person, like like I'm a whole adult. And many of these people have families. Um, like
Oh.
some, at Stanford, people come to PhDs with whole families,
Mm-hmm.
like, and they live on campus with their family. So I can only imagine, of course, if you are feeding people, I can barely get by myself. If you're feeding one or two other people, three other
Mm.
people, if you have a spouse, and you're an international student,
And sending
like
money back home.
sending money back home, like, and then of course you have to think about healthcare, you have to think about all of these things.
Mm.
Of course, people will be like, ha, I'm out. You know what I mean? I'm
Definitely.
out. I'm going to
Mm.
work a 9 to 5 where my work at 5 p.m. I clock out and I go and spend time with my family, or I go out, or I do whatever I want. On the weekend, my weekends are actually mine. You're
Yes.
not in the library, you're not writing a paper, you're not,
Mm.
editing something, you're not reading other people's work. You're just waiting for
Mm.
the next day, and then you clock in, and then you get your paycheck that hopefully aligns with the work that you do. And
Yes.
that's it. And so you like I can totally understand, where you might be like, hey, I'm done. You have your
Yes,
PhD, so I feel like at this point,
definitely.
else is just like additional, but
Mhm.
it is frustrating. I wish it didn't have to be this hard. And I don't think it has to be this hard, but
It
it's
doesn't
just
have to be. Mm.
so set in their ways, and the way that they're structured is just not, it just doesn't work.
Mm. Yeah, I guess we'll figure things out. All I know is whatever I choose to do, I'm going to excel. And, the experiences I've had, will always be valuable. So that's just my mindset right now. And I'm now deliberate about, what are my research days and times. I used to be the all-nighter girl. This year I was
Mhm.
like, no, I'm putting a cap on that, At first time in my life, I'm just like Saturday, Saturday. Even if it means I'm just sleeping or
Yeah.
watching stuff, I never used to like dedicate time. I'm doing that, and I feel a whole lot different, and I'm doing it with no guilt as well. Because when you do it with guilt, you're like, oh my goodness, the time you start working, you feel so overwhelmed. So I think I'm in a very good space. I'm hoping to document it through vlogs, but you know how it is with YouTube.
Yes.
You plan, but like time.
You plan and you plan.
Yes, but I mean, if not, I'll just be putting up blog posts every now and again to reflect on what that has meant for me. So I think that's me for now. Thank you so much for asking that question.
No, absolutely. I'm so proud of you. I feel like, yeah, I'm just so proud of you. I feel like you
Thank
you
you.
deserve to just like chill. You've done the work. You've
Yes,
paid your dues, you know
I
what I mean?
have.
Like, paid your dues to the system. Now it's for the universe
Yes,
to recognize. Oh,
definitely.
to recognize. No, seriously, I really think sometimes it's like that where you're like, Naimari, like, what more? Like, how much more can I how
Mm,
much
mm,
more can I show up and show that, I want this, or, and then I think sometimes there's something about letting go, at
mm.
least that I found very freeing, because I've been going back and forth about writing the bar exam in the US.
Yeah.
I'd committed to doing it. I'd even started the process and everything,
Mm.
because I was like, I need to.
Plan B,
I
plan C.
Plan B, plan C, girl. Like I need to be employable. I need to be able
Mm,
to work. If this PhD thing doesn't pan out, or if this academia thing doesn't pan out,
mm,
and just feeling the pressure of like, well, I went to law school. Like I should be a lawyer. Um, but I realized that I was putting so much additional pressure on myself. First of all, it's so
Mm.
expensive to write the bar exam here.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
you need like to do all of these courses. They're like $2,000, and
Ooh,
then you need to pay for the fees. That's like $800. Literally 3,000, 3.5
that's a lot of
just
money.
to write the bar exam. Um, and then of course it's not an easy exam. Like it's
Definitely.
you
Mm.
be studying 8 to 8 every day for like 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. Um, in addition to doing a PhD, in addition to all the other things that I do.
Hmm.
So I just got to a point where I was like, no, what I'm
Mm.
doing is going to have to be enough. What I'm
Yes.
doing right now, let me do
Mm.
the thing that I have in front of me right now.
Yeah.
And, maybe we'll reevaluate at the end of my
True.
PhD if
Yeah.
that's something that I want to do or if something that I feel like I need to have. But I am tired of accumulating certificates for the purpose of
Girl.
certificates and it not even amounting to anything at the end of it
Mm,
all. I
mm,
mean, like,
mm,
I think it would be one thing if I was doing it and, it was doing something, but I feel
mm,
like I'm more concerned with my happiness and my comfort
mhm.
than I am with y- yeah, accomplishment for the sake of accomplishment. So yeah, I'm your sister in arms.
Yes,
And I get
let's
it.
trust our struggles thus far, and
The
things will work
process.
out differently. And I
Yeah.
think one of the things I've always thought about is maybe it resonated with our parents. I think they came out of school. Like my father told me that when he was done with varsity, there was a list of jobs they could join because I think he graduated in 1984 or something after Zim's independence. He literally chose where he wanted to go. Like and so even when they were training us, it was more about go to school, work hard, then you'll get into place A, B, C. And then if you're working hard, you're gonna get promoted and things work out. But unfortunately, the
Not that.
training hasn't really matched our
Not
real
that.
world
And honestly, trying
experiences.
to explain that to my family and to my parents, uh, it, because for them, they're like, no, but there are others who are doing it. Why can you not be the exception? That's their whole thing. Like,
Oh goodness.
exception to the rule. I don't care
Mm.
about the economy.
Mm.
I don't care about the job market. I
No
need you.
ways. They need to give you more grace.
So it's so interesting, and like, this is literally going to be a 2-hour episode. Primrose, you can
Okay.
cut off whatever, but
All right.
I I think that especially when you're like highly educated as we are, and you know about all of the structural stuff, right? All of the
Yes.
systemic forces. And so you have this intellectual knowledge about your circumstances,
Mhm.
right? I completely understand that, race, gender, and all of the intersections have like a material impact
Of
on my
course.
prospects for like my job
Mm.
within academia, etc. I also have a complete understanding of how we got here in terms of my parents not having a PhD or whatever, like all of the historical social stuff, and we're social scientists, so we're in the
But
weeds.
think about it. Like we're intersectional the whole time.
Yes, but it's like there's such a difference. And I think it's even more isolating to have this intellectual knowledge, right? But
Mm.
not have your community really understand it at the
Yo.
same level that you do. Because you can see and you are navigating certain
Mm.
forces. And you're like, okay, well, this is the reason why this and this is happening. And like, you know what I mean? And it doesn't make it easier. It's not a comforting thing, but it
No.
does give you a sense of like, okay, I understand why this is my journey. This is my trajectory. These are the barriers I'm facing. This is why I
Mm.
haven't gotten to X, Y, and Z. They don't get that. So at least for me, I mean, you're lucky because your dad and your mom
Yes,
are,
they
yeah. My
understand more.
parents not in academia and they don't get it. They
Mm.
they don't get it. They don't get it. Every day they ask me, PhD actual,
Oh,
Benarini,
I used to
or
get those questions as well. Like, what are you still doing?
Girl, like every day they ask me, every day they ask me
Mm,
what my PhD or my dissertation is on without
mm,
fail.
mm.
Every it doesn't matter how many times I explain it, they ask every single time. So it's like, wow, like this I'm really doing this alone. Like nobody gets it. No one gets the
Mm,
struggles. No one gets the forces that I am up against. Nobody understands. At least no one from home. Like other people, grad students, of course, get
oh,
it. But
yes.
like my community, and these are the people that are supporting me,
Mm,
um, understand. And that for me has been one of the hardest things because they have worked so hard to get us to this point,
yeah.
and they are going to see the fruits of all of this education,
Mm.
and they're not
Because your
seeing it.
PhD is their PhD as well.
So at least for me, I internalize that as, oh my gosh, I'm letting down my community. They have been
Mm.
looking to me like, my way, when I will do lawyer, when I will do
Ah,
professor, you know what I mean?
exactly.
Meanwhile, the coins are not coining, the job is
Oh,
not jobbing. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like what must happen? So yeah, it's just been such a trip. Like it's been so hard. And
Mm,
it's one of those things where I'm just like having to be this is why like the mental health part has been necessary for me, because with all of that kind of external doubt and external
yes.
questioning of what I'm
Mm,
doing, I have to be very, very, very diligent about
mm,
insulating myself from that, insulating myself from the criticism, from the questions. So some of them are not coming from a bad place, they're coming
not at
from a place
all. Mm,
and like wanting you to succeed, but nonetheless they have this impact on you where you're like, wow, I feel so much pressure and I feel like I'm such a failure. I'm not where I need to be,
mm,
just having almost 5 degrees at this point. um so yeah, it's a real struggle. I think, at least for me, one of the things that's helped is like finding community, finding people who get
yeah.
it, so that you don't have to constantly be pushing up against this criticism or uh, skepticism around
Mm,
decisions you're making, or just a sense of disappointment in whatever people had projected for you
mm,
that no longer resonates with you. Sometimes you're like, actually, do I even want,
yes.
like when I was thinking about law school, I was like, I'm just pushing for this bar thing. Like, do I even
Don't be a
I've been
lawyer.
saying I've been saying pretty consistently I have no real interest in practicing, but I
Yes.
still keep like, okay, no, but just get it. You know what I mean? Just get it just in case. With no consideration for like how much it's wearing me down. I think
Mm,
yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just sick and tired now, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna do what I want because
yes.
I have
Mm, mm,
earned the right to make to make whatever decisions I want to make, because thus
mm,
far I have done all the things that I was supposed to do. I have gotten all the degrees. I have gone to school. I've gotten
mm,
good
mm,
grades.
mm,
I've made good decisions,
mm.
and now it's time for me to be a big girl. Like I'm an adult, and
Yes.
I can decide if I want to
Sure.
drop out.
Mm,
I can
mm.
decide if I want to
Mm,
pivot into
yeah.
another. I can decide,
Yes.
and not only that, like I also have started to take seriously and to respect the lessons and the skills that I've gained from being in academia for so long. There are
Yes.
so many skills that we have, like as you mentioned, like
They're
besides
transferable
subject
to
matter
other areas.
expertise, like there's so many transferable skills that we have, and we do have to be creative and like finesse how we communicate those skills to
Mm-hmm.
potential employers so that we can get the jobs that we want to get. But I'm not about to be out here feeling like, I'm not that girl. Yes, for you to think like I'm not doing extra,
Mm.
for nothing. If it's not paying me, I'm not doing it. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Because I'm a
definitely.
PhD. I should be
Mm.
compensated as a PhD. And yeah, I absolutely support that approach of like, listen, if things make sense, if opportunities make
Mm,
sense, I'll take them. If they're beneficial to me, I'll take them. But if not,
mm,
giving it because I know my worth and I know what I've put in,
definitely. Mm.
what I've given to the system. Um, and if it's not going to recognize me, then I'll just have to make my own table, or
Yeah,
or
true.
make my own space.
Or
I
go
love
where I'm appreciated, where my
go where
value,
you're
is worth
appreciated,
it.
go where you're compensated, go where you're respected, like or make that space yourself. And
Mm.
we that's the game. That's the name of the game. So anyway, I've
We could go on forever, right?
ranted enough.
No, this is very
Such a good
important
conversation.
information. Thank you so much. I guess for today we can wrap it up here. This is a very wholesome discussion. I don't want to add or subtract anything to what you've said. And I hope that our listeners and viewers are going to also, benefit a lot from this. Not only those who are pursuing masters, PhDs, because there's a lot to learn from this about life in general. So, yeah, thank you so much once again, Gloria, for joining us on the research notes. I'm Dr. Primrose ZJBima, and I'm on a mission to demystify the world of research by engaging in conversations with a diverse set of individuals who are either intellectuals, academics, industry professionals, as well as creators. It's goodbye for now.